Welcome back. We are now down to the Elite Eight. Heading into this wildcard weekend, though, we did pretty much figure there would be one competitive game. Maybe we would get lucky with another one here or there, but it pretty much turned out the way we thought. And we will start there. The Los Angeles Rams traveled to Detroit in the Matthew Stafford Bowl. This game, pretty even across the board. Both teams, 8 drives. Both teams, 55 plays. First downs, LA had 22, Detroit had 23. Third down conversions, both teams 3 and 9. Fourth down conversions, both teams 1 for 1. Now, the Rams did outgain the Lions by 100 yards due to a heavy pass attack that was all through the air. The Lions did have a more balanced attack. Jahmyr Gibbs was utilized the way we thought he would be a lot during the regular season, but he proved to be a big factor in this game. And I think the fact that he was able to keep the ball away from Matt Stafford in that Rams offense was a big factor in Detroit winning this game, because if the Rams have the ball for another 4 or 5 minutes, I think the outcome could be a little different. Now, that balanced attack, along with the red zone inefficiencies for the Rams, really lost in this game, I think. 0 for 3 down there compared to the Lions, 3 for 3. So Dan Campbell, he's got this team better and better every year. He got them into the playoffs finally. Home game. Now he'll have 2 home games. How are we feeling about the Detroit Lions?
I mean, after this game, you got to feel pretty good. That's you earned yourself, based on the results of other games, you earned yourself another home playoff game. So a second one in a row in as many weeks. Your fans are going to be even more fired up, rocking, Ford Field. And I feel good about Detroit coming into this game because you've already faced Tampa Bay once this year, beat them by 14, 20-6, I think that was the final score. So you got film on that game. You know what kind of quarterback Baker is, what they got on both sides of the ball. I give the upper hand to Detroit here, especially being at home. Granted, it's an indoor game, so there's no weather advantages, but I just don't see Tampa Bay rolling into rocking Ford Field and stealing one from Detroit because they are on a roll and they're expecting big things, obviously, especially once you get that first one out the way. So you're kind of playing a little bit more freely, which is even scarier, I think. And granted, they did beat the brakes off of Philly last week. So you're facing a Tampa Bay team who is ready to go. They're playing well. But I just don't think they have the firepower that Detroit has. And Baker's going to have to really be on his A game, and he needs to realize, this is a defense he can take advantage of, and he can't make mistakes. So, and that's the one thing about the LA game against Detroit is you saw what you got. You got what you paid for with those 2 offenses, but the defenses were, less than, desirable. LA, they couldn't get out their own way a lot of in the earlier game because they weren't tackling in the open field. They couldn't wrap up, bring anyone down. A lot of missed tackles, and they kind of shot themselves in the foot by playing that way. And I think if they clean that up, I think it might even be a different outcome there. And then on the Detroit side, we've said it all year long. This defense is just not where you want it to be be able to win a championship. And I think if they do win this game, they'll come. And if they have to go to Santa Clara or Santa Barbara or whatever, it might be a little rough for Detroit against the Niners. And if they somehow beat them, we know what happened against Baltimore. So, but yeah, and playoffs are funny because it's always that this is the last game of your season if you are not prepared and you don't come ready to play. So you got a lot on the line. It's a 1-game season, and anything can happen. So that is the scary part about the playoffs. And I just hope we have a better weekend of games this weekend, which I think we will.
No question. Credit to the Rams. Neither of us expected them to be here, and they were within 1 possession of heading to the second round in the playoffs. We both thought it might come down to turnovers. Matt Stafford and Jared Goff both finished the game with 0, which was a surprise to me. Jared Goff did literally try to throw the game away when he saw Donald run towards him. He shoved it like a little 3-year-old, but fortunately, one of his offensive linemen was able to pick that up in Detroit. Didn't face any penalty from that. But like you said, going forward, facing Tampa Bay. Probably not going to have too many issues, although we will talk about that a little later. But assuming they get past that game, we've been talking about it all year. The big bad wolf sitting down there at the Hay House, man. I mean, it's scary. It's scary. But credit to Detroit, man. They haven't been here for a long time. If you were tuned into that game, that place was rocking. It was almost like a college arena, like Penn State or
Yep.
something like that. So that was fun to see. You saw all the celebrities were out from Detroit, Eminem to Jalen Rose. So that was pretty cool. And they'll have it rocking again next week. So I'm looking forward to that.
To stay on this game real quick, it's I will say one thing about the Rams. If they add a few more pieces and get a couple more playmakers on the defensive side of the ball, this could be another. They could have another year next year that they had that Super Bowl year. They could be that good again because having Cooper Kupp and Puka now, Puka's a beast.
You know what I did hate because he had such a great season that came out of nowhere is this Rams team does throw the ball entirely too much, and they did early. I know teams like to abandon the run, which I don't like in general, but they were never down by more than one score. And it was just Matt Stafford throwing through, like you said, Puka, who was a dog and was killing. But Cooper Cup didn't have much of an effect in the first half. But to your defensive points, this game started like it was going to be 50-51, but both these defenses did tighten up in the second half, and it
Mm-hmm.
only ended up being 23-24. So if Detroit can build off that momentum defensively, which Tampa Bay might be a test, not to the level of the Rams, but they have a chance to tune up this defense in a week or two to go ahead and face San Francisco, assuming they get past Tampa Bay. So
Yeah, there's no
looking
question
forward to
about
that
it.
too.
Playoffs are a whole different type of season.
One game, man, one injury. I mean, they could all go down the drain. A team that dealt with a couple injuries, one to their quarterback mainly, was Philly. We touched on this game. Contention for the worst team performance of the week. I mean, they lose 9-32 to Tampa Bay. It's no secret. Between third and fourth down, the Eagles were 0 for 11. So you have to credit Todd Bowles in that defense, but that is just a shame for Nick Sirianni and this offense. They were outgained by 150 yards. They had under 50 yards on the ground. So for Philly, that's pretty disgraceful given the rushing attack that they had in the regular season. I know, like I said, some guys were banged up, mainly Jalen Hurts, but even the tush push wasn't working this week. Honestly, 32-9, it was worse than that because Tampa Bay had some drops. Mike Evans had one in the end zone. Kate Otten had a few. This game could have really been close to a Houston type score, 45-14, which we'll talk about later. But a complete meltdown from Philly, and I know as a Viking fan, you're loving every second of it. So why don't you take the floor?
I mean, yeah, I mean, granted, I am, but because I hate Philly, but it, it's tough to watch though because after the year you had last year, and then you were 10-1 at one point this year, and then you went 3-6 after the bye. It's I don't know how because you read a lot of what the fans are saying in Philly after this debacle, and it's fire Sirianni, and it makes sense, but it's how do you fire a coach who just brought you to the Super Bowl 1 year ago? You know what I mean? It makes it kind of tough, but at the same time, if you watch this game and the end of their season closely, it looked like he had no idea what the fuck he was doing. Like, and to me, I think Shane Steichen and Jonathan Gannon, the coaches for the Colts and the Arizona Cardinals now, had probably the biggest roles in that Super Bowl bound team.
No question.
I think Sirianni, like some Philly fans said in the comment section, they said that he's paid as a head coach, but he's pretty much the highest paid cheerleader in the league. Which that's hard to argue. Like based on what I see and what I watch, he's he's a very ego. He's got a big ego. Thinks his shit don't stink. And I mean, you hire a defensive coordinator this year to take over for Jonathan Gannon's, since he went over to Arizona. I think his name is Sean Desai, came from Seattle. And then you demote him and you promote Matt Patricia to that role. That to me right there, it's just that's mind boggling, and that means you're grasping at straws to fix something, and you don't know what. And if you watch, even if you watch the Tampa Bay game the other night, I'll have to say I wish we had the clip to play, but I'll send it to you. But Brian Baldinger is talking. He's got the film up on Philly's offense, and he's talking about it. I mean, they run one play where it's an RPO. Jalen pulls it, and he's ready to throw right away. There's no one open. There's no one looking for the ball. There's no awareness. So he just takes off and runs for like a 3-yard gain. That's ineptitude right there. I mean, you're not prepared. Then the other play is you hike the ball. You're in shotgun formation. You got Goddard's the inside guy, or no, Julio's the inside guy, and Julio's the inside guy, and Goddard's the outside guy. Julio's obviously running some sort of. He's trying to go around Goddard and run a vertical, I believe.
Okay.
And Goddard's coming back towards the inside. They collide. And the play is blown up. How do you run a play where that happens? You've been practicing all week. How does that happen? There's just so many times you watch that game, and then they hardly run the ball with their running backs.
Yeah, bro, I am not a fan of firing my coach, especially after he gets my team to the Super Bowl. But this team had 3 scoreless quarters.
But it's the same team as last year, pretty much. But you regressed so much. You probably had, after the second half of the season, you probably had the worst offense in the league.
You know what? You finished, what were the numbers? 26th and 30th defensively as far as points and yards allowed. And that was all on the back half of the season. Because the first half of the season, you might have been fraudulent, but you were 10-1.
Yep.
And like I said, 3 scoreless quarters. You couldn't tackle, or you didn't want to tackle. So to your coaching point, like I said, I hate doing this, but there was no adjustments. And that could be to your ego point as well. But I mean, the team came out lifeless. Hurts was under constant pressure, whether it be Todd Bowles blitzing 70% of the time and him constantly not having anybody in there to help him, or the receivers not looking back for the ball, but not doing anything to help your quarterback who's already banged up.
And then you got
utilizing that run game that finished top 5 in the league.
Yep.
These are all cases for you to get the
and think about this, bro. Think about this. Think about this for a second. I'm bringing this up because I've read a bunch of Philly fans in the comment section saying the same thing. Every time you get down to the 1 or 2 yard line, you know what's happening. They can't run any other play, bro. You have a coach. You have a coach and a coaching staff, but I'm putting this on Sirianni. You have a guy who's unwilling to run any other play besides that because he thinks it's going to work every time. They've got the past two games. I think they've been stopped at least twice with that play inside the 5. That's on the coach, and Sirianni is a supposed offensive guru. He's the one who was in Indy, and he came up. I think they ran that play. I think with Phillip Rivers even out there. So he came up with that idea to have the people push the quarterback in the back and help him get an extra, yard or two, whatever the fucking case is. But so he brought that to Philly, especially with what better quarterback to run it with than Jalen and that offensive line in Philly. So, but the fact that that's like playing Madden and being one of those guys on Madden online that you just are going to do the same thing over and over again and have no creativity because it works.
That's fine if it's working. But if teams,
it's fine if it's working, but like you've gotten to the point the last 2 games where it's the last game of the season and now it's the playoffs, and you're getting stopped now because everyone knows that it's coming. Yeah. So the more and more you do it, there's going to be defensive coordinators who come up with better schemes to out scheme you. So and it don't matter what quarterback you have, don't matter what O-line you have. There's going to be coaches defensively who are going to come up with stuff to be able to stop that play every single time. So to me, it's like, go ahead. There's no reason to outlaw the play in my book. Like if you can be successful with it, be successful with it. Like do it until you're stopped, obviously. But It's just I think what the fans were trying to say by it is he doesn't know what he's doing. He can't create. He come up with different plays. He can't scheme. He can't do things that an offensive guru or should be able to do. And the fact that he's an offensive guy and he's got an offensive coordinator to lean on, and you put out a back half of the season like this, and then last game against Tampa Bay in the playoffs. I mean, Jalen Hurts looked nowhere near the MVP level of last year. He looked like a completely different guy this year.
No, he looked
It was
terrible.
just like it was such a regression across the board from both teams, and I think even more so we can talk about that defense in Philly because last year it was dominant. This year it was like this ain't that defense. I mean, there's nothing about it that's scary.
No, a matchup that I liked was the tight ends against those linebackers. And besides those drops, that matchup was wonderful. Mike Evans didn't even have a big game. I mean, you lose Darius Slay, which is just salt in the wound in this one, but Philly
Yep.
really was embarrassing from start to finish.
Well, and then and Bradbury is I don't know what he's doing. Like he's supposed
Cooked.
to be elite, and he's just god awful right now.
Yeah. After all the talent they added, especially on the defensive side, and guys that are another year in the league, the Jordan Carters and Jordan Davises and Jalen Carters and whatnot, it's really, really disappointing that a team like Tampa Bay was able to do. Like I said, should have been 45 or so. Like 32 does
Yeah.
not do this game justice.
Yeah,
So yeah,
it's tough.
Sirianni, if
I
he's out
mean,
of there,
it's
that won't be a surprise.
no, but at the same time, like, granted, anytime like Cowboys or Eagles lose, or with Packers in there, like I'm happy, but you feel for those fans because you know how frustrating it can be as a fan of your own team, like when things go that way. It's just like, and the fact that you're waiting and you want answers at those press conferences right after the game, and you don't get them, and you got to wait until something's said or a decision's been made on the coaches. And it's because as fans and diehard fans, like we clearly see what's going on. We don't have to be inside those walls to understand what's going on in that organization. We see it on the screen every Sunday. We see how it's looking. But it's so easy to see, especially in professional football, because everyone's so good, if a coach is bad or if he doesn't know what the fuck he's doing. Like, it is not hard to call X's and O's, bro. Like, and call and scheme and call plays as football minds, I should say. Like, but I think these coaches, especially these younger coaches that get these jobs and first timers, they're eager to prove so much, and they get such big egos that they get in their own way and they regress as coaches.
Mm-hmm. That could be part of it. What I did back in 2017, that's when they won the Super Bowl. I mean, he wasn't there. Never mind. Moving to the next game. We have Green Bay at Dallas, and Dallas is really the only reason Philly was in contention for the worst team performance because Dallas, they got the first round medal around their neck on that one, man. Green Bay won the toss. They elected to receive the ball, which not a lot of teams do. They go down, score. I think they might have had one play for no yards or negative yards. Other than that, it was a perfect drive for the Packers. A Jair Alexander interception deep in Dallas territory, and the Packers' offensive capitalization put them up 14-0. It was just downhill from there. They have another touchdown after they force a sack on third down from Dak. 20-0 after a missed extra point, then a pick six to cap it off in the first half. 27-0. Dallas does get a touchdown right at the end of the first half, thinking they might have a little bit of life getting the ball in the second half, but like you said, man, they were unprepared. And the news that you broke to me right before we got on here is quite astonishing.
Yeah, I don't know, bro. Obviously, so yeah, news broke that Mike McCarthy is being retained as the head coach of the Cowboys 2024. That, I mean, that's really surprising for me, for with an old guy like Jerry who's getting up there in years, who doesn't have a lot of time left, to see this team win a championship. every decision he makes is crucial. And based on what I saw out of this last game with Mike coaching against his former team in the Packers, it was just another Mike McCarthy led team that was unprepared for the big moment. And the stuff you showed all season long as taking over as play caller again, and the bounce back year Dak had, and looking like an MVP candidate, and then in typical Cowboy fashion, you just get to a big moment and you just crap it all away, especially to the youngest team in the NFL and a first full year starter in Jordan Love. Not taking anything away from the Packers, because they came out and balled. They did what they came to do. They obviously wanted to, with the mindset, to go in there and dominate, which they did. Jordan Love has had a great bounce back, second half of the year. I can't shit on the Packers. Like they're in the playoffs, we're not, and they're playing very well. So credit to them. And of course, if they hit on another quarterback, that's just fucking life, bro. I
Look at the
mean,
life leaving your body right now.
it's tough to swallow, but I guess just credit to them for being able to draft and develop quarterbacks. Some teams, they're able to do that very well, and they probably would be up there with the best of them. So if that's the case, but with Dallas, it's just like, bro, I think after this one, it's got to be said now each and every year what Stephen A says. Just wait. Just wait. They will let you down.
Accident waiting to happen.
And I think that should be, even Dallas Cowboy fans, I really think that there should be no loudmouth Cowboy fans anymore. Like, we've been through the same thing year in and year out since the 90s, bro. Like, nothing's changing. You are who you
Especially
are.
back.
They're a great regular season team, and they choke in the playoffs. That's what the Cowboys are. That is their slogan pretty much. Like, I don't have any belief or faith in the Cowboys until they can prove they can go win a championship.
Unless Dak is truly the Black Kirk and he takes a jump from 30 to 35, because he's 30 right now, the Dallas Cowboys have no chance of winning any kind of Super Bowl with him as quarterback.
No, he flounders in big moments, bro. Big games. Like, he reverts back to what we're used to seeing with him. So all this, all the great things he did in the regular season this year, and him helping turn CeeDee Lamb into a legit number one, and this and that, and going from leading the league into interceptions to touchdowns. Well, I mean, you just shit it all away in one game.
Yeah, you did, bro. You really did. His numbers last year are the same as Hurts' numbers this year: 23 touchdowns, 15 interceptions. But Hurts led his team to the Super Bowl and played pretty phenomenal in that Super Bowl outside of that one turnover, which ended up costing Philly the game. But until Dak is on that kind of level, he's not to be trusted.
No,
and because
you
Jalen Hurts
can't.
was able to accomplish that last year, that's really the only reason I picked Philly in that game. But I did text you once I knew A.J. Brown was out, it's going to be Tampa's game. And we knew it was Tampa's game pretty damn early, honestly.
Yeah, there's no question. I mean, I just thought, coming into the wild card weekend, I just thought like maybe, Philly was a team that was going through some rough spurts, and they're going to kind of get back on track with the playoffs coming up, as it's a kind of a one-game season. You got to lay it all on the line. So I thought they'd kind of revert back to last year form, or the beginning of the season form, and it just didn't happen. It was complete opposite. So, I don't know. Like, and to me, that after this past weekend, I said to you, like, if you, as Cowboys people and Philly people, if you don't look at serious changes with your coaching, I don't know what to tell you. Like, granted, if you make the decision to keep your coach, all well and fine, but have very good reason to explain to your fans why and your thought process behind it. Because, and have a plan going into next year with certain changes if you're keeping that coach, because there's things that aren't working within your team. So, and there's got to be accountability there when you go out and perform the way you do between those two teams in their respective games.
Very true. There could be two Baltimore coaches on the loose this year, potentially more. I really do hate that they can take our guys for interviews while we're trying to prepare for a 45-point week one performance, but that's the NFL for you, I guess. Nothing comes easy. We'll switch over to the AFC here. We'll go Pittsburgh at Buffalo. There were comments from George Pickens after the game. There were a lack of comments from Mike Tomlin after the game, which we'll talk about later. But George Pickens basically said, "We can't beat the Bills and the referees." And there were some iffy
Excuses,
calls, and the refs have been terrible all year. And they missed some calls in this game, but
but it's just
George
overall
Pickens,
excuses.
it is excuses. And George Pickens set the tempo because after Pittsburgh did fail to score or do anything on their opening drive, they did allow a touchdown to Buffalo, but then George Pickens on the second drive does fumble the ball, allowing Buffalo to go up 14-0 on a short field. And then obviously Mason Rudolph doesn't help that. They go down the field in the red zone. He throws an interception in the end zone, and Buffalo was pretty much able to get ahead and not look back, winning the game by 14. Now credit to Pittsburgh because they did battle back. They did actually make this a little bit of a game late, but the offense really has been the issue this year. Obviously, not having T.J. Watt to provide some pressure on Josh Allen, who had his career long for a touchdown, I believe it was in this game. I mean, Pittsburgh just didn't have enough to compete with Buffalo, even with all the flaws and injuries that Buffalo has. How do we feel about this one here?
I mean, I expected. I did not. I mean, I came into this never once expecting Pittsburgh to even come close to winning this game. Granted, they didn't get technically, blown out per se, but it was kind of after the first two touchdowns, it was over. Like you knew it was over. There was no coming back from that hole for Pittsburgh. Like they just didn't have. They don't have enough. And I mean, 3 years in a row now, they've been winning record team with a negative point differential.
That's
So
unbelievable.
yeah, so they're they're somehow some way winning games, but it does not look pretty. It's not sustainable.
You know what's crazy to your point is that they did finish 10-7 this year. They lost the two easiest games on their schedule to the Patriots and the Cardinals. They could be a
Right,
12-5 team, which is
right.
ridiculous.
And it's been a hell of a run in that respect for Mike Tomlin and his teams, but that can't be a formula for success. Is a better way of putting it, I guess. It's not a formula for success. I think, and obviously Kenny Pickett, I don't believe he's the guy who's going to get you anywhere. I don't think he to me he's more of a solid. That's a type of guy you want as a backup in this league. Not a leader of your team. So I don't know. I don't know where you go from here. But they're a team. I mean, they're a team like you. I don't know. Based on what Mike Tomlin can do with his teams, like shit, I don't know. Maybe call the Vikings about Kirk. I don't know, or just if they get a quarterback like Kirk, I just think this team is way better than what they would be with obviously Kenny Pickett. Like he takes them to a whole different level.
There's a lot of options. So similar to you, kind of worried about the rest of the NFC North. I'm very worried about the rest of the AFC North. Miami at Kansas City. We knew this was going to be a strength on strength. Unfortunately, only one of those strengths showed up. This game was 7-26. I don't know if it was a case of bad weather or Miami just not showing up in these big games, but they didn't show up in this game. I know Tua struggles in cold weather, but he does also struggle against that top tier talent or elite opponents. So this was both going against a second ranked defense in negative 30 degrees. Miami's D was banged up. I understand that. Allowing 26 points with a healthy defense, okay, we can cut that to 19. But the issue is the offense. It's catered to Tua. Mostert had 20 touchdowns. Cheney or Achen, he had the all-time record for yards per carry, minimum of 100 attempts in NFL history. You get rid of Gesicki, who was a good receiving tight end, for another tight end to fit your system. And obviously, you have Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle. Tyreek Hill, he showed you why he could have potentially won the MVP if he was healthy. Because, once again, Tua underthrew him by 37.5 yards. Tyreek had to jump up over the defender, come back for the ball, make three guys miss, looking like they were playing Pee Wee football, and provide Miami their only touchdown of the game. And going forward, you know, it's looking like Tua might be the guy next year. And you and I both said his time there might be getting cut short. And this is a great example of that because he has limitations and they were on full display against Kansas City.
They've
How do you
they've
feel
reached
about this?
Miami's reached their fullest potential with Tua leading the way.
I agree.
There's no more room for growth with this team. What you see is what you get. And while they can be very explosive, there's major flaws with Tua, and he's not a top tier quarterback in this league. So, um, you can do as you can. I think they've built around him as best they can. I mean, this was a team that I think if you have any better quarterback, this is a serious threat for a Super Bowl. But with Tua leading the way, they're capped, bro. I think they're capped at where they're at, and there's nothing you can do to get better. Mike McDaniel can do all the scheming and creating of plays that he wants, but your potential's reached, buddy. There's and that and you got to come to that realization pretty quickly because the more you go on with this, the longer you go on with this, it looks more worse for Mike McDaniel and how he coaches and who he is as a coach. So yeah, if it's Tua next year, I think that they might, they could be in the playoffs again, but it's probably a one and done or two and done at best.
Yeah, this was a game where I thought the coach could have made some more adjustments. You finished the regular season with the top five rushing offense, and you didn't really utilize either of those running backs in this game. I thought Kansas City was going to be focused in on that, but they were really focused in on that passing game. Really didn't have to be focused in on that running game. But I think that is something they're going to have to be focused in on against Buffalo because James Cook was able to run all over Pittsburgh. And then going into Buffalo, facing Josh Allen in Buffalo
Oh,
for the first playoff game, I mean, you're going to have to be clicking. Like you said, you're going to have to be prepared. You're going to have to be aware. You're going to have to be ready. And everybody's going to have to be on the same page.
I think, but I think with this game with Miami and Kansas City, it was at Kansas City. It was super cold for a team way down south in Miami to come up north and play. They're not used to it, especially a guy like Tua. All Kansas City really had to go into this. Let's take away their weapons and make them beat us in the physical aspect of this game, which they cannot do. So they didn't have to do much to achieve victory here, in my opinion. They took it to them, and they didn't let go. And I think they realized going into this next game with Buffalo, and it being Patrick Mahomes' first ever road playoff game, and it's still a cold weather game up there in Buffalo. They know it's going to be physical on physical. The most physical team will come out victorious in this game. And I think that's where Kansas City's playoff experience benefits them.
Yeah, I can't argue that. We'll get to that in a little bit, but that's gonna probably
But
be one of the better games of the weekend.
yeah, and that was my point though, is with Miami, I just don't I just they didn't, outside of that passing game with, especially the underneath stuff with Tua and Waddle, or with Tyreek and Waddle. Granted, a chain has been a great running back this year. They're just not gonna out physical a team like Kansas City in cold weather with the run game. They're just not. So they tried every which way to be the team they usually are, and it just failed.
No, and to your point of them reaching their potential with Tua, if this game was in Miami, okay, you might put up 21. This defense is still really good for Kansas City, but they had
Mm-hmm.
plenty of drops. You can attribute Kelsey's drops to the cold for sure. I know the rest of the guys got butterfingers from time to time, but they have potential to put an easy 30 burger on you easily. So,
Yeah.
like I said, the defense was banged up, but they had no business being in this game with the product that they put out there. Our last game, which was our first game, was Cleveland at Houston. We had a lot of questions coming into this one. Will Joe Flacco be able to replicate his Baltimore run? Is Houston, we know they're young, but are they ready? And, you know, will the injuries catch up with Cleveland? I said this about a month and a half ago. It's impressive what they're doing. I think this was right before Joe Flacco got there, but they were banged up all over the place, and I wondered how long they would be able to sustain that level of play. Not having Grant Delpit, you saw that because they had busted coverages in the back half of the secondary all game, and then being down two offensive linemen. We thought the Cleveland defense was going to show out. It was really Houston's defense with 4 sacks and 2 pick sixes. They were able to keep C.J. Stroud clean, even with banged up Laramie Tunsil at left tackle against Myles Garrett, which is phenomenal. Houston, they meant business, man. 45-14, home game. That crowd was rocking too. That was probably the best atmosphere of the weekend, honestly, if you ask me.
Yeah, for sure. I think besides the LA Detroit game, which I thought that was the most entertaining, I thought the Houston Cleveland game was probably the next best game, even though it was a blowout, just because I think Houston exceeded my expectations, and the way they came out and performed and the way they were prepared and ready to go was very impressive. And I've said it all season long that I've kind of been on the Houston bandwagon this year just because I firmly believe in D'Amico Ryans. He was one of the guys that I really wanted to possibly be the head coach of the Vikings last season, but that didn't happen. So I'm a big fan of D'Amico. I think what he's able to do with the defensive side of the ball is impressive, and what he did in San Francisco was very impressive. And you know, him being a guy who played in Houston, like it's just a great story. And I think him being the guy to be able to be the guy to rebuild that, build Houston into something, special is awesome. And they hit they nailed their draft pick with CJ Stroud. This dude looks like a star in the making. He kind of already is, but to be a rookie quarterback, putting up the numbers he's doing right now in this throughout the season, and now getting his first playoff win, like this team is just set up, for success in the future now. And win or lose against the Ravens, been a great season. You exceeded expectations, and I think like I said, whenever your season ends as a Texan, there's things to build on. You add a few more pieces, and you're going to be kind of like the Lions in the NFC, the serious threat for years to come.
No question about it. That would probably be the team I compare it to Detroit over there. It was Miami, but I'm not liking what I'm seeing from Miami these days, so I can agree with you on that. We got anything on this recap before we head to our next little category here?
No.
Do you have any winners from this wild card weekend or any losers?
Well, winners will be Houston, obviously as a whole. I think a winner would be Baker Mayfield for continuing his bounce back year. And like you said, comeback player of the year running. And so Baker Mayfield. Losers, definitely Philly and Dallas. Like those two teams, bro. Like those are the two biggest losers.
I agree with you on that winners, actually, because Baker was able to tear up that Philly defense, and he gets the luxury of probably playing the two worst defenses in this playoff tournament. Because now you're going to Detroit, which, yeah, the offense is great, but you could probably put up similar type numbers or have a similar type performance against this team. If you do that in a hard fought battle, close game, your contract situation is going to look pretty nice going forward. So I think
You're
Baker is
right.
definitely a winner. Losers, I have the NFC East as well, but I told you I'd bring them up. I do think you guys are one of the losers this week. You see the Packers potentially having 20 more years of greatness. You see the Lions on the up and coming. Every year under Dan Campbell, they've gotten better. And Chicago has 2 first-round draft picks. We don't know what they're going to do with the first overall pick, but you guys finished with the same record. Chicago was in a couple close games. Yeah, one came with you. But, we argued their record could have been a little better than it was. And you're very close to being the worst team in this division. So somehow you ended up on this episode, and I'm sorry for that.
It comes with the territory. I mean, this is what happens. Like I said, it's a pivotal offseason for the Vikings. I don't know what they're gonna do. I'm excited. I'm excited and nervous as hell to see what we're gonna when this new 2024 season officially opens in March and free agency starts. I hope to God we learn very quickly what the Vikings plan of action is, because if I am waiting 2-3 weeks before I hear rumors or news of anything, we have serious issues.
Yeah, no question. You're not one of those teams that can afford to do that this year. Shall we do it?
Let's go.
Let's get to this Elite Eight. Our first game, we have Tampa Bay at Detroit. I think, Detroit's obviously the sexy pick on paper. But like I just mentioned, they don't have a great defense. If Baker can build off this kind of momentum, he loves being the underdog, obviously being on the road to a team like Detroit. You're going to be the underdog with a 9-win season. Tampa Bay, they do have a formula to win this game, mainly because that run game and Mike Evans is able to make big plays against those corners who struggle on the perimeter defensively for Detroit. But Detroit also has a recipe to win this game for the same kind of reasons. That offense against the defense in Tampa Bay, who I trust a little more. But their trick, if you want to call it that, is blitzing. This Detroit offensive line is phenomenal, if not the best in the league. They're right up there amongst the best in the league. I think they're going to be able to neutralize that blitz a little bit. So it's going to have to be a lot of Antoine Winfield making Ed Reed type plays on the back end, which Jared Goff is very prone to make. So I think Tampa Bay does actually have a better chance than a lot of teams are giving them. But I truly just can't trust Baker in this position. So I'm going to have to go Detroit.
Yeah, I mean, you've pretty much said everything. I just think what it comes down to is while it's an indoor game, it's the second playoff game in history in a row at Ford Field. That Detroit fan base is starved for success. They're going to be rocking probably even more than they were last game because this is to get to the NFC Championship, and it's your last home game of the season. So there's going to be too much fireworks from this Detroit offense for Tampa Bay to overcome.
I think this will actually be a pretty fun game. Pretty similar score to that first game Detroit had. If it goes like the first game Tampa Bay had, I would be pretty surprised, honestly. We'll keep it in the NFC here. We'll go Green Bay at San Fran. Why don't you go first on this one?
I mean, I'm not going to shit on the Packers or anything, but I just think, now we're getting to the weekend where we're seeing two number one seeds come into play. There's home field advantage here. We know the playoff rivalry between Green Bay and Niners, and these games, how they've turned out in recent history. While I think it's a great bounce back year in the second half of the season for Green Bay, and they went on a playoff run, got into the playoffs as a wild card, last seed, first time that the 7 seeds beat the 2 seed. They handled business last weekend, but I still think that they're going to show their youngness this weekend against San Fran, and I just don't think they'll have any answers for anything San Fran throws at them.
So Dallas did have a top 5 defense. I know you shit on the floor a little bit, but the word around town is that while he did have Aaron Rodgers, and while Aaron Rodgers was one of the best quarterbacks ever, Aaron Rodgers was taking a lot of control of the play calling. So if LaFleur is to be this offensive genius, do you think that provides a little bit of advantage against the San Francisco defense? Given a guy who's, let's just say, dual threat.
Yeah, I mean, look, I think, yeah, I have been a little hard on the floor, but I think when I took a step back after this last game in the playoffs here against Dallas and the job they did as a whole, yeah, you look at the big picture of the season, and he actually did a pretty damn good job coaching this team, especially being the youngest in the league. So I think that while I think Green Bay will throw a little bit of some fits at San Fran has had pretty much another bye week just last week and got rested up. We know that they've been in the playoffs consistently for some years now, but they have yet to get the job done and secure that Lombardi. I think the San Fran team is just too hungry for Green Bay.
Fair. We'll move over to the AFC, where the real ballers play. We have Kansas City at Buffalo, like you mentioned earlier. Mahomes' first game in the playoffs on the road. It'll be cold. How you feeling?
Boy, I've been going back and forth with myself on this game because
It's like the goddamn Batman and Joker rivalry at this point.
Like I said, it's Mahomes' first ever road playoff game, which in the grand scheme of things probably doesn't mean much, but it's just crazy to think about. God, I have to go. I'm gonna go Kansas City here just because of the history and the playoffs and the experience and the coach. But at the same time, part of me thinks that Buffalo will beat Kansas City
That's going to be a tough place to play. I do
because
like.
they're gonna be so hungry for this game because they have to get that monkey off their back with the Kansas City in the postseason.
It's Buffalo though. They've always had the monkey on their back.
I know, but this is I like I said, I picked Kansas City, but I'm not surprised if Buffalo wins this game. But this is a huge game for like a Josh Allen guy because this is gonna say a lot about your legacy.
Here's what I here's what I like for Buffalo. To your point of Josh Allen having a big game, he probably is going to have 300 pass yards, 80 rush yards, 5 rushing first downs, 4 touchdowns for them to win this game, something like that. But he hasn't had to do that this year, especially last game. James Cook, like we mentioned earlier, he killed Pittsburgh on the ground. Diggs, this is something I don't like because his playoff resume with Buffalo is very subpar. And then that also resumed in that first game against the Steelers. He only had 52 yards or something along those lines. So that's worrisome. I don't also like that, or I also don't like that their defense is as banged up as it is.
Right.
Going against Mahomes, I don't care what the receivers look like. I don't care what the running back room looks like. I don't care how old Kelsey is. You never want to be shorthanded against that guy and Andy Reid as a combination. So I think that's very worrisome for Buffalo as well. Now, luckily, they do get to face this team at home this time. We know Kansas City is probably one of the top 5 hardest places to play in the league when that team was good and that place is rocking. So being at Buffalo, that's going to provide some benefits for this team. I do think Kansas City's defense is just for real this year. We can talk how we want to about Tua, but still, that coach over there, Tyreek over there, the weapons they have, they should have been able to muster up more than 1 touchdown. So Kansas City's defense has been doing it all year. L'Jarius Sneed and his partner on the other side have been shutting down pretty much any wide receiver duo you want to throw out there. Christian Jones is obviously one of the best on the D line, and I think Buffalo's just not going to be able to get over this hump. Not this year. They're just not healthy enough. But I do like that they are kind of changing their approach, and for that reason, I do think they'll bring McDermott back, and I do think they will be right in the thick of things next year. I don't think they're going to be changing too much. If they just get healthy, they're okay. Houston at Baltimore. I am nervous. I think Houston, 45 points, was the highest scoring team in week 1 or wild card round. So, I mean, that's obviously not something you want to go up against. This team was clicking week 18. Came down to the last possession against Indianapolis. These are the kind of teams heading into the playoffs that have all the momentum, that have been playing for their lives for 2-3 weeks now. And these are the scary teams to play. Now, CJ Stroud, it was between him, Jordan Love. Mahomes played well. His numbers won't show that he played as well, but this was probably the best quarterback performance we saw. I honestly give it to Jordan Love. But CJ Stroud, he's just pinpoint. He's ice cold in his veins. He is a killer. And him with that combination of D'Amico Ryans, it's very worrisome because they're young. They don't know any better. They are hungry, but they don't know what they can and can't do. So you just have this team going out there who is dangerous, who has no expectations. I mean, you can't feel good about it. You're one play away, you're one injury away from not making the next round. So you're never safe. But with all that being said, we do have our guy 89 back. Mark Andrews is back in the building at practice. Unfortunately, it's not looking like Marlon Humphrey's going to be able to go. If he is, he's going to be very limited at that corner spot. So we know CJ's connection with Nico Collins has been second to none this year. If we don't have our CB1, that's going to be very worrisome for our defense. But I am hoping that even though Larry Tunsil and the guys were able to neutralize Myles Garrett, keep CJ Stroud clean in that game one, we will be able to generate some pressure with Mata BK, Clowney, Roquan, Patrick Queen, and the boys. I do have Baltimore in a close game taking the dub. It was 25-9 when we played this team. I think it was either week 1 or 2. This game's probably going to be more 23-31 along those lines.
Fair enough. Yeah, I would like to think this game is going to be competitive. I if it's not, it's because Baltimore is just that team, bro, and that you've had quite a few blowouts this year against teams where it's like, damn, like you really put the NFL world on notice, throughout the season with those type of games. So, I would like to think it could be, competitive this week between these two teams, but that's also to your point of, Houston still being a young team. I think they are well coached, and I think they will be as well prepared as they can be. Like you said, they are, hungry, but they have nothing to lose, and that's to me what makes them scary. So like I said at the beginning of the show, like, win or lose, there's a lot of positives for Houston going forward. So you cannot hang your head if you lose this game. Like you exceeded expectations this year, and you're set up for a very nice future. So with that being said, I mean, I do have Baltimore. You can't pick against Baltimore right now. I think that this is the team to beat in these playoffs. And it's probably, most people would probably pick Baltimore to win the Super Bowl. So I just think, Baltimore's just got to come out, be prepared, and not lay an egg, because that's the only thing that would be your downfall is if you just show up and you chose Sunday or next Sunday as games you didn't want to show up for, which as Harbaugh as your coach, I just don't see that happening. Like you said, you get Mark Andrews fully healthy back, which is a very big thing for this offense. And let's not forget, you did sign Dalvin Cook, who's going to be, a week or two of practice now under his belt, probably contribute a little bit.
See
So
you, Melvin, fumbling boy.
so I mean, I just think that this
Uh,
Ravens team is going to be locked and loaded, ready to go. And like Lamar, said, I don't know if it was last week or the week before, but he's promising a different outcome in the playoffs this time.
I don't like promises. We know LeBron's history, but I do like, Lamar does seem to have a different demeanor about him this year. And to your Harbaugh point, he's just one of those coaches that you have to figure you can trust. There's not a lot of guys where you can really trust or say we're
He's
not going to let
along the
this one
lines
get
of
out of
Tomlin and
hand.
Belichick, and
He's right there.
he's up there.
He's right there. So, combination of him, Lamar taking another step as far as a leader, Roquan Smith leading that defense, Kyle Hamilton breaking out. You know,
This
it's
team is
hard to
loaded.
see. It's hard to see. It's just hard to see a meltdown like I saw with
Right.
Cleveland. Who saw that with Cleveland? Even with lack of turnovers. Now, granted, they were pick sixes, but they were able to do whatever they wanted against Cleveland, who had a top 3 defense in the regular season and a potential DPOY. So
Yep.
I understand they were hit with a lot of injuries, but still, this team showed no nerves. Like you said, bro, they have nothing to lose. So those are always the scary teams to play if they're talented. That's it for me. Until next
I'm good to
time, we
go.
appreciate y'all.
Obviously, yeah. Well, yep.
Sorry, you got it. We lagged a little bit, so go ahead. Say your piece.
Oh no, I was just saying until obviously it's going to be hopefully it's a better showing for games this week. That's all I really have to say. It was a major letdown last weekend, and I feel like hopefully this weekend can redeem itself, the playoffs as a whole. So,
Well, I can guarantee you one thing: there won't be 5 blowouts,
right, yeah, there won't be.
but there could be 4. You know what I mean?
There could be 4. I hope to God that's not the case. But like I said, anything can happen in these playoffs year to year, and we've seen some crazy shit happen in the playoffs before. So I don't know. I think the easy thing to say is, like I've been saying, is it's got to be Niners and Ravens, right? At the end. But who knows?
It has to be. I mean, like we said, or like I told you earlier, there's only two teams that we can realistically lose to, and people would probably give us a pass, quote unquote, and it's Kansas City or San Francisco. If we lose to anybody else, we're talking about probably getting Harbaugh out of there. Like it'll probably get that bad, honestly.
Man, that's damn, that's
And then we're
crazy.
talking about Lamar. He's no better than Dak, and we're going to talk about a whole bunch of nonsense. And I'm going to have to hear it for 5, 6 months. But it's all right. It comes with the territory. You got to fucking
You're
show
right,
up,
it
bro.
does. Yeah. That's all I have though. I'm good until next time.
All right. We appreciate y'all. Peace.